Welcome back to the Charlotte Angel Connection, the Charlotte area podcast linking entrepreneurs, investors, and the broader Charlotte community. As you know, our goal here is to interview the individuals who are building, shaping, and influencing entrepreneurship in the Charlotte region so you can stay invested in Charlotte's growth. Today, we just wrapped up our podcast with Alex Smereczniak from 2U Laundry. We actually did Alex's co-founder, Dan, did an podcast interview with Alex's co-founder, Dan, way back when, one of our very early single-digit podcasts. So this was a chance to circle back around. Obviously, 2U Laundry is a laundry delivery service. They also constructed their very first facility last year. And so it's a chance for us to check in. They did a $6 million Series A in September of 2019. Obviously got hit with COVID, as did every other business across the country and world. See how they responded. They're pivoting, which is just a natural result of this, right? And it sounds like they're really pivoting into a great space. They're going to take it into a hybrid franchise model. So for those of our listeners that might be interested in exploring what that franchise model might look like, Alex talks a little bit about that. And give some information on how you can contact and find out more about the opportunity, et cetera, et cetera. But really good conversation, just kind of exploring the beginnings, where they went, how they got there, what the business is doing, how it can go, what exits might look like, and all the partnerships that they've developed over the course of the last couple of years, how they leaned on their board, how their investors have helped them. Just a nice interview. I mean, you can tell Alex has done this for a couple of years. He's now moving into his fifth year with it. So just a mature entrepreneur talking about the hurdles, challenges, opportunities, etc. So once again, I hope you enjoy another great edition of the Charlotte Angel Connection.
All right. So Alex, thanks so much for joining us on the podcast today. Glad to have you.
Of course. Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So interesting times for sure for your business, and look forward to kind of diving into a little bit of history on 2U, where you sit now, where are you going in the future. So anyways, as I told you a few minutes ago, I'm gonna lead you off. I'm gonna let you get up to a running start and give me a little 60-second commercial on Alex and 2U Laundry.
Yeah, happy to. So my full name's Alex Smereczniak. I'm from Redwing, Minnesota, originally, of all places, and our claim to fame is Redwing shoes and Redwing boots. So if any listeners are familiar with those kind of made in America shoes, I'm from the town that they're made in, and ended up down in.
So real quick, I gotta pause you right there. Are you sporting a pair of Red Wings as we speak?
Not right now, but I've got 6 of them at home, and they're usually more so for the winter when it gets colder.
I got you. Okay,
but they're phenomenal. So I'm from there originally, and ended up down in this part of the country by way of Wake Forest. So I'd always wanted to get out of the 7 months of frozen tundra and see other parts of the world, and loved the kind of mid-Atlantic, southeast region, and applied to every school down here I could think of: NC State, Duke, Chapel Hill, Wake, Vanderbilt, all of the above, and ended up at Wake before. And I was a finance major there. Ended up running and selling another laundry business there before moving to Charlotte to do consulting at Ernst & Young for a few years before getting back into the laundry space. I guess I didn't have enough and couldn't keep away.
Fair enough. So what'd you learn at EY that great company, right? Good presence here in Charlotte. They do a lot of stuff for the entrepreneurial community here in Charlotte. You were there for a few years after already tasting some success. So what was that experience like for you?
Yeah, so I interned for EY the summer between my junior and senior year. And it always helps when you have a few of your older fraternity brothers that were also working there, and kind of could show you the ropes and get you acclimated to what being an adult is like outside of college when you graduate. So I had a phenomenal experience. I think the people there, the culture that they've built, is arguably one of the best experiences that I've had with working with another group of people ever. Incredibly sharp, motivated individuals, but at the same time, know how to balance that and have fun and get to know each other, and entertain clients, et cetera. And so really got to learn all these technical skills, being good at PowerPoint and Excel and understanding how to pitch to a client or a person, but at the same time, building the relationships, not only with clients, but also, the people that you're working with. So it gave me a lot of those foundational, technical, but also kind of relational, practical skills as well.
Yeah. Um, so you're there for a couple years and you decide to step out and replicate a business that you'd started in college. What was that, lack of a better term, what was that aha moment that said, I gotta go give this another shot?
Yeah, so when I did it in college, I mean, I think I out of the gate thought, hey, this is such a unique, such an interesting business model, of basically creating a marketplace, acting as the middleman. Why can't you do this at Duke, Chapel Hill, Vanderbilt, et cetera? So when we were running the business, it was me and two other partners. I was always the guy that was like, hey, even when we graduate, let's keep doing this. And they were more of the, hey, no, this is a resume builder. I'm going to go do investment banking in New York or marketing for Pepsi in Dallas. And I didn't want to be that guy that held them back from doing that. So we ultimately sold. So I think and I share that because even when we sold it, I think it was still in the back of my head of the what if and the what if. And I don't want to, live a life of regret later on or having thought, the what if my whole life. So I think even after 2 years being at EY, I was always thinking of other ideas or how could I start this back up at another school, or in a city and see if that could work. And I saw two companies on the West Coast, and this was really the kind of the straw on the camel's back, or the impetus of the decision to go and do it was there's two companies that raised $30 million to go after it. They were getting customers. They were showing that there's something here. And I just kept watching them get bigger and bigger and thinking, I'm going to have more and more regret if I don't do something about this. So I finally just quit my job and said, hey, they're both on the West Coast. There's really no one really out on the East Coast doing it. Why not do it and see if we can plant our flag and make something happen?
So you pick up the phone, you call your parents and say, hey, I've got this great job with EY. I'm going to quit and start my laundry business all over again. How'd that go?
It did not go as well as I would have thought it would have, honestly. At first I thought, they'd be like, hey, you guys already sold this business. You kind of know what you're doing a little bit. You've worked at EY for a few years now. You're young. Why not go do it? Instead, it was, well, I don't know. EY's, it's a big four. It's a good name brand. They pay you well. Why do you want to go and do that? You should wait. And it was kind of very nicely said. You kind of like, don't do it. Wait, wait. Maybe you should get a customer and then do it. Then it was, maybe you should get 100 customers and then quit. Maybe you should get 1,000 customers and then quit. And it was always kind of this next thing. And I think I just had such strong conviction that I was like, there's never going to be a good time to do this. I mean, you probably know it yourself, starting your own practice here in the past few years is like, there's probably always a reason to convince yourself that there's a better time. But I've felt that there isn't a better time than now. So
Yeah.
I did it against kind of my parents' initial, wishes or, advice, which was hard, that you could tell they weren't fully supportive as you'd want parents to be, but that very quickly changed. Within 6 months they were incredibly proud and supportive, and it was just that first month. I think it's scary. They just want the best for you, and this is a scary, unknown, uncharted thing.
It's funny. I always tell people the best time to start a business was yesterday. So right. So I mean, it is right. There's everybody will always come out with a reason to do it, a year from now or 2 years from now, but the reality of it is you should have done it yesterday if you were already thinking about it.
Yeah.
So, there's going to be a lot of scary aspects of it along the way. And that's going to be there the whole time you do it, no matter whether or not you wait a year or 2 years or 10 years or 30 years. So there's always a reason not to. So do it yesterday.
And that's why when I meet other entrepreneurs, whether they're my age, older, younger, you name it, I always am sure to share with them how just impressed I am that they took the leap, because I think that is the difference between like really doing it and giving it a shot or not, is having that kind of gut feeling and following it. It's hard to do. I think that is the hardest part, I think, is saying I'm going to go all in for at least a year and try it.
So you make the commitment, you're going to give it a shot. You walk away from EY. What's the difference in the business model from the first turn to the second turn?
Yep. Yeah. So this time, I think our thought was, we could try universities, but there's so much red tape, and it's like it's almost like this really long-tailed sales cycle because you need the administration to back you and support you for it to successfully work on campus. And as administrations are very bureaucratic. The laundry isn't their first priority, and letting an off-campus vendor. So our thought was universities are attractive, but tons of red tape, hard to prove, and get validation or an MVP. Even though we'd done this at Wake, maybe that was lightning in a bottle, and we need to go prove it elsewhere, and it's going to take too long. Why don't we do what Washio and Rince are doing? And go after cities, and let's see if millennials out of college, bankers, lawyers, CPAs, consultants, et cetera, who have more money than time, we'll be up for this. So that was our initial hypothesis, was target the apartment buildings, the Class A properties in Uptown and South End, and see if we get traction, see if something sticks. So really the big differences were targeting non-university students, and everyone else but families, busy professionals. Otherwise, it was almost identical. You pay us, we go pick up your clothes, we get them clean, bring them back to you within a day. A little more, premium than it was in college for sure. Different. You could pick different days instead of being set to 2 days a week, which is what it was in college. Faster turnaround, more customizations, et cetera. Those were certainly differences, but everything else, the underlying business model was near identical, just a different customer base.
Yeah. So you start off on that model. When did you, 2U was started in 2016, is that right?
Yep, January of 16. So I'd quit EY December 4th of 2015. And then it was kind of like a month of, planning. And we actually had a few customers at that time already, going back to what my parents were saying, like, hey, get a few customers and then quit. And it was like, we got 10 now. Is that enough? And no, 100, 1,000. It kept going. So we always say January is when we officially launched, because we were at that point 100% all in. No one else had any, secondary commitments or primary commitments. It was just that. I'm not sure if Dan shared it in the original conversation you guys had, but we had 5 guys living in a 3-bedroom apartment with my golden retriever, mattresses on the floor. We'd work together, literally sleep next to each other, like in the same room. It was 24/7 with each other, only working on this.
Well, hopefully you were using your own service at that point in time, and you at least had clean clothes and sheets, right?
Yeah, exactly. We were eating our own dog food from the beginning.
Yeah. So you do that in 2016. We're 2020 now. So the business model initially was to go to the south ends of the East Coast, and market to millennials. And you drive that. You raised money in 2017, right?
Late 16, actually. So we'd raised our first round in August of 16, and we bootstrapped to about 50 grand in revenue really quickly. And that's when we realized, hey, there's something here, and we need to build some tech, and that costs money that we aren't profitable at this point outside of what we're trying to, scrap by and live off of.
Yeah.
And so we had raised 400K originally to invest in technology and launch a second market, which was, looking back on it, very naive and out ahead of our skis, out ahead of our skis a little bit.
What was that market?
It was going to be Raleigh.
Yeah.
And between January and August, what had really taken off for us is we were targeting all these millennials, and these working families got a hold of it, these dual income households with kids, and a few moms got onto it, and they started posting in South Charlotte mom groups and all those pages, and it just took off. Everyone wanted their own promo code that they would share with their neighbors and their book club or their gym buddies or work friends, etc. And that just took off for us. And that's when we thought, hey, we've got this figured out. Let's go launch 5 cities. And it turns out scaling's not that easy.
Yeah.
It was one thing, but 2, we'd raised the round to go launch Raleigh, and one of our competitors had gone out of business. And long story short, wanted to learn from them. What went wrong? Why did you guys fail after raising this much money? And that really caused us to listen and be methodical about how we scale, which we're thankful for. I'll never forget those conversations, because it prevented us from launching Raleigh and actually doing the right thing and perfecting the underlying business model in Charlotte before we got too aggressive. Crawl, walk, run. Really, we tried to go crawl, run, and skip the walk phase, and that doesn't work.
Not usually very well.
No.
So business continues to grow. You do Techstars in 2017, is that right?
Yeah. So 17, the highlights are really we don't launch a city. We start to vertically integrate without buying the assets. So what I mean by that is we start owning the cleaning process in other people's laundromats. So we go in, overnight or during off hours, Monday through Friday. Because most people don't realize laundromats are generating 70 to 80% of the revenue on weekends. Monday through Friday, assets are just dead, even though they're paying for them. So the owners love it because they're generating revenue while they're sleeping or while they're not even there. We love it because we have control without the capex, and our customers get a really good, consistent experience as a result of it as well, because we now have that control that was desperately needed. I mean, the competitor that went out said that was arguably the main reason why is they were losing 20+% of people's clothes, and that's just that level of error and shrinkage and loss is just it's not sustainable.
Yeah. So 2017, you get better. 2018 is what happens in 2018. Anything worth discussing? Just continuing to perfect.
Yeah, 17 was Techstars, and we raised a $2.5 million seed round. 18 was we launched Atlanta in January of 18, so that was our official second market. We had also started talking about vertically integrating and actually owning the assets at that point. So instead of us going into different, mom and pop laundromats, us owning the whole stack. Had a conversation with Electrolux at the time. They're an $18 billion appliance company located here in Charlotte. And they were kind of our saving grace, financed 100% of our first location here in Charlotte, which is actually an old McDonald's that we converted into a laundromat. And that was a ridiculous experience for us. I mean, we're 24, 25 at the time, and the first piece of commercial real estate we're ever buying happens to be from McDonald's corporate. So it wasn't a franchisee that we were dealing with. It was their Chicago office. And so we're going up against arguably some of the best real estate people in the world. And thankfully, we have investors that are also incredibly and probably equally, if not smarter, than the individuals we were talking to, who had, one of them being Jason Williams, started FastMed out of Raleigh, grew to 350 locations. So he had negotiated lease after lease and property after property. And so he was in our corner the whole time, kind of whispering in our ear, hey, say this, hey, this is how you get them to move a little bit on this. So thankfully we had an awesome group of investors and advisors and mentors to help us get through that. But that was a huge moment in 2018, as well as securing that site and then building our first retail location.
And that retail location opened in?
It was July of 2018.
So it's essentially a walk-in washer and clothes style place, right?
Yeah, the nuance different is that your typical laundromat's 1,500 square feet to 2,500 square feet. This one's 6,500 square feet, and the reason being is we're going to process the idea was we're going to process 100% of 2-use pickup and delivery volume out of there instead of using 3 or 4 dispersed mom and pop laundromats that have our own teams in them. So we needed all that capacity for storage, for workspace, for people sorting and folding clothes, but also for the retail laundromat. And what was really cool and unique about it is our thought was, we're not this big manufacturing plant that has a 600-pound washer and a 600-pound dryer like you would see for commercial linens at hotels or hospital beds or uniforms, because we need to keep, Will's clothes separate from Alex's, and you might want hypoallergenic detergent and I want scented. And so it's like this small batch, almost like a small batch brewery. Like we're not making Budweiser, we're making this like really crafted IPA instead. And so we need different equipment. And mom and pops have that equipment. So we knew we were going to have all these smaller batch equipment. And our thought was, can we get them to be utilized more often than any other laundromat in history? And the way we're going to do that is being both a retail coin laundromat and a processing facility for 2U. And the way we're going to do it is design the store so there's roll-up doors all over the place that we can be flexible in the layout at any given moment. So actually on Monday through Friday, we shut down 60% of the store's footprint. 2U's processing all of that in the back of the house. The public has more than enough machines though, because Monday through Friday, people aren't doing laundry at 10 a.m. on a Tuesday. But then on the weekend, when 2U's not operating, we open those doors and it becomes the largest laundromat in North Carolina. And so you have this kind of perfectly synergistic complementary business that gets to fully utilize the assets that typically laundromats aren't able to do. So that's really the biggest differentiator of that first store.
Yes, that first store, I mean, you went from like a hub and spoke model to like the FedEx model, right? You're bringing everything into Memphis and you're shipping it out the next day.
Yep.
That's pretty cool. So that takes off. It does well, right? You right out of the gate that location's um, um, a success for the business model.
Yeah, the thing that blew my mind is and getting into something like that was scary, right? It's once you build, you put all this investment into it, you can't move it, and if if people don't come to it, what do you do? You're sitting on this asset that's fixed and stuck there. And so that was daunting and and scary at first. And the thing that thankfully happened is we put every bit of thought and strategy we could behind it into ensuring that that didn't happen. And within 3 months, the walk-in revenue, which is a completely new revenue stream for us, grew to about 50,000 in monthly revenue. People pumping quarters in and buying detergent and snacks and Gatorade and whatnot from us. I couldn't believe how much revenue, how quickly, and it on its own covered its monthly net. All the the loan on the equipment to Electrolux, the mortgage on the land in the building, and then it cash flowed on top of that in a way that was would have been a sustainable business in and of itself. So that was hugely rewarding and satisfying to see like, hey, this can work and this really can be the ticket to how we do this going forward. And immediately became a part of our strategy. We immediately started looking for a location in Atlanta because we knew we needed the same thing. And we're under contract on a location in Atlanta in late 2019, coming into this year, and then the pandemic started, and we had to kind of pause plans on that. But
Yeah.
yeah, the first location was just a huge success, and something that we are aggressively looking to replicate as many times over as possible.
So you create success with the facility here in Charlotte. It's a great facility. It's profitable. It's driving the business. It's really started to help change the business model. It's kind of your quote unquote pivot moment, I would assume. And in the same process, in order realizing that you have to go after that model, you make the brilliant decision to raise money in 2019 rather than 2020. What'd y'all raise in 2019?
Yeah, so 19, this is now, we're in Charlotte with a vertically integrated location with about 20% net income margin in Charlotte. We've got one proof point, right? It's like, hey, this is viable now. It's quality is where it needs to be. The margins are which felt so good because up until that point, I mean, I think most entrepreneurs, maybe not most, but I think a lot can look in the mirror and say, hey, there's a 90% chance this doesn't work. That Charlotte getting to that point was, hey, maybe it's not 90 anymore, now it's maybe 70, or 65% chance of failure instead of 90. And so that felt really good. And we wanted to go out and replicate it. So we're in Atlanta now with our own teams and laundromats again. We're near profitability, but we know we need that vertical integration. We know we're going to need capital to do it. So in late 19, we go raise about a $6 million Series A, not only to vertically integrate Atlanta, but to double, if not triple the size of Atlanta, and then go launch 3 additional markets, with Raleigh being the first one. So we go raise the round, launch Raleigh in January, and then cases are starting to hit Washington State. And I think everyone knows where the story starts to go from there. And we had, I remember in early February, our board called an ad hoc meeting, and just the amount of foresight that they had is arguably one of the most impressive experiences I've ever had in my entire life. Is just their ability to see something and react well before the rest of the world did.
So what was that like? So you got a board meeting in February. You're launching Raleigh. Atlanta's moving strong. COVID is prevalent in China, certainly. At that point in time, it's probably starting to make waves in Europe, but really not much here in the U.S. I mean, what's that conversation like at that point in time?
Yeah, so we had just had a board meeting in January about Raleigh and how it was going, and then I think the first case, I think there was one case or a few cases in Washington State at that assisted living or assisted living home, and our board's like, hey, we should talk about this. It's going to get worse before it gets better. Sequoia wrote that article in January, and I think everyone at first kind of read it, maybe dismissed it a little bit. And so our board, Eric Eubank, Jared Belsky, and Kim Jones, all got together with us and just said, hey, this is going to get bad. Preserve cash. Cash is going to be king. Shut anything down that's not profitable. Let's pull out of Raleigh. And at the time, I remember Dan and I got off the call and we're like, are they maybe being alarmist, or that seems extreme? And we put all this work into it and time, and Dan and I very quickly were like, no, I mean, they've collectively have, nearly 100 years of experience. And sorry, this light went off here. Nearly have, 100 years of experience. We should listen, and they're not wrong. The worst case scenario is it is extreme, and we have to flip the switch back on, which is easier to do than being wrong and spending all this money and delaying the inevitable. So we shut Raleigh down in the first week in February. And Atlanta, we said, hey, we need a 20% hit in volume for it to not be profitable anymore and to not be worth, trying to salvage a week in. And then you start to see cases spread in Washington State. I think then Atlanta gets its first case in mid-February. A week later, we had about a 10% hit in volume, which was abnormal. And I think we just started to see the world changing incredibly fast. So we temporarily shut Atlanta down. And Charlotte, the beauty again of this brick and mortar is that Charlotte needed an 80% hit on volume to not be profitable anymore. So it was virtually, indestructible at that point. And so Charlotte, we've kept on and has remained profitable and, an exciting business for us. Whereas Atlanta, had we built that location, which was good and bad timing because we were under contract on a location. They're about to purchase it. And we decided not to within days of, the due diligence period being over and us likely signing and buying it, which would have been the worst timing ever, looking back on it.
Yeah, so I mean, you would have bought it and then had to essentially burn cash to build it up, and then not know what it was going to look like on the other side of that point in time, right?
Exactly.
So what you've done is you preserve cash. You're still sitting on it. You go buy it if you want to, with certainty. I don't want to say back on the horizon, but you certainly have a little bit better grasp today than you did in March, April, May.
Mm-hmm.
So
no, absolutely. And I think one of the other things the board did that was just so helpful is just, again, having the foresight and the wherewithal to say, hey, you have this once in a lifetime opportunity, even though I know it's daunting right now and the world's kind of in turmoil and it's a little scary and anxiety producing and all these kind of negative things. They looked for that very positive light and said, how many times does any individual entrepreneur get a chance to say, I get to hit the reset button with, sitting on millions of dollars in cash with a team that's got all these successes and failures, all the things that we've learned, what to do and what not to do, and can prepare for it now. And again, hit that reset button in a meaningful way. So they challenged us to take the next 2 months when these things are being, wound down and the world's kind of slowing and halting almost to see, watching and waiting basically what's going to happen. Instead of you watching and waiting, start planning and preparing, and get the team together and see if there's any pivots or, what kind of opportunities are going to come out of this. And so that's exactly what we did. We tore our business apart, the good, the bad, things we hated, things we loved doing, things we were good at, things we were bad at. And 3 themes presented themselves. One was, to you as a service it is more of a premium offering. It's an affordable luxury. It isn't for mass market. This isn't UberX or Postmates. It is for someone that has enough disposable income that wants to buy some of their time back, essentially. But we were positioning it the whole time as a mass market thing. UberX, everyone's going to use it. Why not? When in reality, it is your household with 100K plus, 150K plus in income, which isn't everyone, right? And so we wanted to reposition it that way. So it does come off as more luxurious. It has many more customizations, more flexibility, a subscription offering, more technology to power it. And so that was one theme that presented itself. The other 2 themes, though, which I think are the most exciting, or arguably the most exciting pivot or part of our story this year, is the themes were the labor risk on our end was big. I mean, this facility that we built in Charlotte, we had 60 hourly employees working out of it. And so every city, imagine we're gonna have thousands, a small army of hourly employees, which is possible. I mean, companies have done it, but it is hard. I mean, there's turnover, there's issues that SaaS companies otherwise wouldn't have to deal with, right? And it has a layer of complexity that's difficult. So there's this labor risk theme. The second theme was, vertical integration is absolutely key. It actually grew 22% throughout the pandemic. That retail revenue took off and continues to be recession proof, now pandemic proof, and just a really good business. And so we looked at that as, how do we do more of those, because they are capitally intensive, and how do we find a strategy to rolling them out faster? And this is where this idea of franchising just that component came in, because we thought it could address both of those themes of spreading out some of that labor risk to franchisees, while also getting those franchisees as partners in our business to build their own and develop their own locations. And to explain in detail what I mean by that is, the laundromat business in and of itself is a $16 billion industry. Just coin washers and dryers that people that don't have their own washers and dryers can go use, whether that's college kids or lower income demographic. That business in and of itself is sleepy, stodgy. There's not a clear winner. It's highly fragmented. And in part, a lot of that has to do with the industry hasn't caught up from a technology perspective. I mean, there was no way to actually track legitimate revenues from a franchisee before, or even on a corporate level, if there was theft going on. It was just quarters. Now, and recently, Electrolux built equipment, and their competitors are following suit. The equipment can track everything. I mean, every penny, dollar, quarter that goes into it, when the machines are down, what's going through it. And so you actually have this ability to put controls in place that didn't exist even 4 years ago. And so you're starting to see people attempt to franchise the laundromat space. And I think we are going to see a lot of consolidation here in the industry. And our thought was timing couldn't be better. Inventory is coming up because businesses are getting shut down right now. And this allows us to go sell a brand, the technology we've built to run the facilities much more efficiently and smoothly than others could do on their own. And then on top of that, we can layer our 2U volume and make this laundromat something that has 16% asset utilization up to 60% asset utilization, which is a magnitude, massive difference. And so that's the strategy: is franchise the brick and mortar. You could build a laundromat on the east side of Charlotte, all in for $250,000 to $500,000. Electrolux will finance up to 100% of it as part of our relationship with them. And then we can come to you and say, hey, you already have this franchise business that does $600,000 a year in revenue, 30% EBITDA margins. We're going to layer 2U on top of it, but not the whole thing. We'll give you 500 monthly active users, which is another $250,000 to $500,000 in revenue. If you want to, you might want to be the self-absentee operator. You also might want to be that owner operator that's hands-on and wants that additional revenue. And so we've kind of got one for each type of person.
Where did you go to research the franchise model, right? Who'd you talk to? Was it, I guess I imagine it starts with investors and board members?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So we pitched the idea to our board at first and said, hey, we think there's something here. And at that point, we had done research on our own, online, talking to our network. I mean, our network was arguably the most helpful, going through Techstars, going through Endeavor in Atlanta. Within a week, we were talking to the CEO and founder of 24 Hour Fitness, who's just within 30 minutes gave us 15 nuggets that we'll carry with us from here on out. So just people who have been doing this their whole lives. Talked to the CEO and founder of Sports Clips. Talked to the chief development officer at Bojangles here in town. And so just all these really sharp franchise gurus that gave us just a wealth of knowledge on how to structure it. What part do we franchise? What part do we not franchise? What future rights do we need to reserve? Can we buy back locations? What's the franchise fee, royalties, you name it, the whole gambit. We got just a plethora of information and knowledge from that network. And so then we go package it up and we present it to our board. Hey, here's the 3 different ways we're looking at it. And we work through it with them to land on what we've ultimately landed on now, which is start by franchising the brick and mortar, because we have this unique relationship with Electrolux, and it does provide a very exciting, viable opportunity. It's not what we intended to get into in the first place, right? We always thought it could be a marketplace. The reason we vertically integrated was kind of out of a necessity and means to an end. And now we're coming full circle where we can continue to build that marketplace, only we have a little more control on the supply side than we had before and needed, which is, it kind of works out perfectly. It's a win-win for everyone involved.
How did you come across the relationship with Electrolux? I mean, obviously it helps that they're located here in Charlotte, right? But did y'all reach out to them? Did they reach out to y'all? How did that relationship get up off the ground? Because I mean, that sounds, the fact that, they help finance the equipment aspect of it for y'all, they're willing to step in and help it on the franchisee level as well. I mean, it's a really nice relationship to have. Where'd it start from?
Yeah, and I mean, you're right. It's huge. I mean, and where it started was, I'd like to say it was some master plan that we had, and we reached out to them, but I can't take credit for something I didn't do. One of their sales guys actually reached out to us and said, "I see your guys' trucks everywhere. You guys have to have your own location, right?" And we said, "No, this is how we're doing it." And he's like, "This is how you guys. This is so smart." I mean, I think Electrolux would be interested in this beyond us just selling equipment to you guys. I think there's something here where if this is working the way that you guys are describing to me now, could you go do this in other cities? Is that your plan? And we shared, of course, we're raising money. We are actively trying to build a nationally recognized brand. And his thought was, and he, at that point, we shared all of our pain points of we're working out of 3 other people's laundromats at this point. And there's all sorts of headaches with that. And we explained those headaches to this individual, and he goes, "Let me run it up to the head of laundry happens to sit in Charlotte. Our North American headquarters is here. Let me see if he would be willing to meet with us and talk about it." So we go meet Tom Washbrook is his name. The head of laundry for Electrolux sits here in Charlotte. We have a meeting with him, and he loves the model and says, "Hey, I think we can do something here. Let's de-risk it for you guys. We get you're a startup. We'll finance 100% of the equipment, and if this works out, we can go do this 100 times over, and this becomes a 10-year annuity for us because you have to swap equipment out every 10 to 15 years, and we want to sell the equipment anyway, so it's kind of a low risk, high reward type of opportunity for us to go at least explore one with you." So that's exactly what we did. We bought the McDonald's, they financed the equipment, and within the 2 months of it growing to where it grew, they flew us out to Sweden because they're like, the ramp that you guys have experienced is not typical, and you guys are very bought in and passionate about this, and we love the 2U model. Let's go see if kind of strengthen the relationship and see what this looks like, I guess, for the next year and 5 years, 10 years beyond.
So just pause with me for a second, Alex. I mean, small startup in Charlotte, you're having success delivering to dual income families in South Charlotte and up in the Davidson area, I think. You're growing that business model. It's going well. You're doing dry cleaning. You're doing all of these other things. But what really helped kick it to the next level was partnering with large existing player, right? Little did you know it was going to essentially, paired with the pandemic, completely change the business model. So, Charlotte's a town with entrepreneurs that are looking to take a business model and get it up off the ground and go out and scale and grow and do the things that you've done, right? I mean, you've raised money 3 times. Mm-hmm. So you can't just tell somebody to start a business and wait for the big guy to fall in your lap, but that's essentially what happened, right? I mean, take from the baseball movie, build it and they will come. But is there a turnkey system to make the big corporate guy come really scale or launch the business to the next level? I mean, what does it take besides luck, timing?
There's definitely, I mean, I always say it's 50% hard work and 50%, I'm not sure what the composition is of luck though, and timing. And I think you have to control the things that you can control, right? And it's that 50% hard work out of the gate. Again, you have to have that, be willing to work endless hours for little to no pay, especially in the beginning. And then the other thing is, the timing and the luck. There's that saying of, people create their own luck. I don't know if I 100% believe that, but there's some truth to it as well, as looking for those opportunities, having the peripheral vision to see them, but then also setting yourself up for those lucky things to happen over and over. And I think, in a sense, we controlled some of our destiny by getting the vans out there, growing as much as we could, because it caught this guy's attention, who then, that conversation presented itself as a result of the things we were doing, not the idea in and of itself. So the execution to me is everything. You've got to continue to execute. And then at the times where it feels like it's not working and you want to give up, a book I think everyone should read, especially that want to be involved in startups and being entrepreneurial, is The Hard Thing About Hard Things by Ben Horowitz. And he talks about you're really never truly in a corner. And I believe that wholeheartedly. Is there might be times where you feel like your back's against the wall, but you have options. They might not be good options, but you have multiple choices. It's not just a one-way thing and you have to give up. There are 15 different ways you can not give up. You have that choice. And I think that's the advice I would share is, if you had the balls to, quit your job and go after it in the first place, why are you not having that same mentality a year later when you have a hard problem to solve? You can't just give up after the first hard thing, because there's always going to be hard things. And it's having that just kind of relentless, persistent mindset of always finding a way out of that corner and finding and creating as many options as possible is to me the key.
Yeah, no, I agree. There's always another hard decision to be made. And there's always there's always an avenue out. It doesn't mean that you get lucky and you get the right avenue, but there's always a right avenue. Um, so, so the new business model is to take to you and partially franchise it. Will you do that? Will will you- will you do that in Atlanta, or will Atlanta be another corporate store?
Yeah, so our thought is we'll continue to build corporate stores in parallel, because we've gotten advice from the guys at Sports Clips and a few other kind of retail franchise concepts that they franchised aggressively at first because they wanted the brand presence, reputation, they wanted to be first to market, and now they don't necessarily regret it, but they're buying them all back. They want to have them corporate owned, and they just did it at first as kind of a growth strategy. And so their advice was, along the way, as much as you can, continue to build corporate stores, especially in spots where it's going to really benefit to you, because that's, again, ultimately kind of for us personally, for our personal passions and goals and what we want to build out of this to you is really kind of that bread and butter. Even though, again, franchising is incredibly exciting, it's a means to an end for us still, which is why we're I think it's a perfect symbiotic kind of relationship to franchise those out, because people can make incredibly good money off of it. It's just not the business that we wanted to get into, managing all those assets and locations. It was more so this marketing technology play that we've been most excited about.
So go back for a second. You mentioned, when you started this in, I guess technically December 2015, one of the reasons that you started it was because you'd seen two companies in California successfully raise money and go after the marketplace. Subsequently, one of them went out of business, and that was helpful for you as you continued to push To You Laundry forward. The other one, is it still around, or is it going under too?
It's still around. Yep. So
Are they doing the same thing, or are they still on the old business model?
So the biggest difference between them and the one that went out is the one that went out was purely trying to be Uber for laundry. So 1099 contractors, incredibly inefficient routing as a result of it, because laundry doesn't behave like food delivery or ride sharing, where you need it now and there's enough demand at given times, at a lot of given times of the day. So that was really like one of the other linchpins for that first one. The second one learned from that as well, did static scheduled routes similar to how we do, but they are still outsourcing everything. And that's where I believe, the last kind of linchpin exists, is you've got to have control on the laundry side, because there just is not a supply chain on the wash, dry, fold piece. Dry cleaning, you can outsource it and you rely on it. It's reliable, professional operators with good technology, et cetera. The laundry side is just kind of a wasteland. And the laundromat that you maybe used in college or have driven by or have seen before, that 90% of them look that way or operated that way, and you can't build a business around quality out of that type of operation. You can't.
So, so they haven't pivoted yet to your own business, to your business model, where centralized store FedEx model type place, right? Is anybody else operating in that space as far as or is it kind of greenfield for you right now? Blue ocean, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, so as soon as we did that, I think that was the other thing that Electrolux shared with us early on, was they're like, we know Washio, we know Rinse, we've looked at, they're looking, they're not, they're a huge company with a lot of resources. They're watching everything to see what's coming up and could potentially dislodge them or displace them or disrupt them, et cetera. And so they were very hyper aware of all the other laundry startups. And I think this is why part of the reason they were as excited and willing to do what they did is we haven't seen anyone take this approach, and we've had internal hypotheses that if we were to ever get into this space, we'd do something similar to what you guys are doing, or if there was going to be someone that could figure this out, it would be this type of model, because they understand the asset utilization, they understand the importance of keeping those running and generating as much revenue off of them as possible, and they understood the unit economics of delivery, just watching like the P&Gs of the world and Tide doing Tide dry cleaning. And they were just hyper aware of that and thought, you have to own the whole stack for it to work.
Okay. Um, sorry. What's the trajectory from here? So, obviously, again, I don't want to say we're completely behind the pandemic, but numbers coming down. I saw the other day that JP Morgan is requiring their top level managers in New York to come in. So slowly people are going to start to open back up offices. Schools will, at some point in time, Charlotte just released their schedule for sending kids back to school. So, gosh knows, hopefully, time is on our side, right? I mean, we're going to return to a normal life. How quickly do you launch, right? I mean, how quickly you're already taking inquiries, I think, from potential franchisee owners, which is I guess a question we should ask. If any of our listeners are interested in a franchise, I guess there's a link on the website or something like that, Alex, is that right?
Yeah, so it's 2ulaundry.com/franchising.
Okay.
And then they can email me directly to at alex@2ulaundry.com. That's the number 2, the letter U, and laundry.com.
Okay.
But yeah, we're very aggressively targeting that now. We can't start legally selling franchises until mid-October. We have to get our franchise disclosure document completely wrapped up, and the franchise agreement wrapped up. But there is already kind of a waiting list, if you will, of about 150 people that are interested in starting to have that conversation around what does it look like, what areas, what sites are available, what territories are available. And we're going to start with North Carolina, South Carolina, and Georgia.
Okay. How do you divvy up territories? I mean, you're learning a whole new world of the franchise, right?
Yeah, so that's been fascinating. Is some people carve them up into zip codes, but that doesn't work. Some businesses that works for, others it doesn't. For laundromats, it's hyper local, right? I mean, it's a 1 to 3 mile radius play, and that's it. And so what we do is we have built territories based on another one couldn't exist within 2 miles of another one. Sorry, 2.5 miles of another one. And then we look at the population, the certain demos that we look for, and for a successful laundromat. And we think Charlotte has the capacity to have 30 to 40 laundromats, really good laundromats. And we're looking to try to capture 50% or so of that market. So we want to build 10 to 15 of them here in Charlotte. And then you can 2 to 3x that in Atlanta.
Okay. And then I guess as you go big city to big city, it's you just look through your demographics, you look at what it could fit, everything else, you divvy it up and you let it go.
Yep. Yeah, and the way it's really interesting. So let's say you and 5 others were interested. If you're one of the first in the pecking order, you get first grab at sites that we've identified as being, of course we don't want to pick all really good sites, but we might have one that sticks out more than another, and one that's very close, etc. You have first dibs at that site. But if you're moving slow and pass on it, or just for whatever reason you have cold feet in the process, it goes to the second person. So there is this, that's how we'll go about doing it, which I thought was, again, a good nugget of information we got from people that have been doing this for a long time, is to have those kind of controls and processes in place to be as fair as possible. Because that's really, at the end of the day, it's a partnership. We're not hiring someone. It's someone getting into business with us as a partner.
Is this a less capital intensive route for y'all to take then? I guess, and where I'm leading to is this essentially, will you raise money again in the not too distant future?
With this model, I don't think we'll have to, because the franchise fees coming in and the royalties coming in do offset a lot, and we are still sitting on a good bit of cash. So that combined with this model, if executed correctly, we won't have to raise again, unless we're like, let's go blow it out and someone else is onto us and they're trying to copy us. We need to go faster. That could be a reason too, but we do have a little more control from that perspective, which is good.
How's life been with your investors, specifically the recent round, right? The September round. They've been pretty patient with you as the whole pandemic took over. Helpful, strategic, all of those different things. And I guess knowing that you can't talk bad about your investors, but anyways.
Well, I try to be as candid as I can. I mean, I believe in complete transparency, even if it is, I don't even like to say the word negative, even if it is constructive, feedback or whatnot.
Well, sometimes it can be negative.
Yeah, that's fair. I try not to be though, right? Like, hey, if someone was mean, I'll say, hey, someone was being mean about, mean or unreasonable about something. but no, everyone's been overwhelmingly supportive. And this isn't me trying to just talk nice about people to talk nice about people. It's been from every angle, people reaching out, how can I help? Have you thought about this? And even, I mean, we did consider an option of returning capital and, selling the assets that were profitable. I mean, I'm not gonna, again, I'd rather be transparent about it. I think it's healthy to be able to do that. And it's probably productive and helpful for people listening, I guess, to be able to talk about the hard things too. So we seriously did, consider that as one of the options of, do we return capital? And everyone basically said, look, you guys continue to be incredibly passionate about this. What's the point of locking in a loss versus there's this viable pivot here. It's wide open space. It's a huge, huge market still. You guys still have a good team. You still have the cash. There's still revenue coming in. There's profitable elements of the business that are exciting. Why wouldn't we, go for it? And so that's where we came. It's just funny. One of our lead investors called, and I was waiting for some of the potentially bad news of, hey, we really want you to return capital, not really a suggestion, but more of, hey, we're going to push for this and fight for this, and we want to make that happen. And our lead investor called, and he starts the conversation with, I'm sure this is, you probably don't want to hear this. And I'm like, oh, great, here it comes. And what he said was, isn't this a blessing? And I was like, wait, what do you mean? Isn't this a blessing? I don't know if I'd go that far or call it a blessing. And he elaborated on, and kind of what I shared earlier with you is, how often do you get the chance to reset sitting on as much cash as we're sitting on, with the team that we have, with the lessons learned, and the opportunity now in front of us, all this inventory coming available in retail, the relationship with Electrolux. It almost feels as though, and I don't mean to sound insensitive, but it feels like this was a blessing in disguise. And I get what he means by saying, isn't this a blessing? So thankfully it wasn't, hey, return capital. It was, you've got an opportunity to take advantage of it, get after it.
Yeah. So you've raised money, and from institutional places, and ultimately that obviously means that they want to sell in a future round, or they want to realize a liquidation or an IPO, or whatever it is, right? They want their money back because their investors want their money back.
Yep.
And I mean, obviously a very clear potential exit strategy sits right in our backyard with Electrolux, I would imagine. You mentioned, some of the other big laundry players. What's the view at this point in time? Is it just to grow the business to X and then continue to evaluate, and not close any door? Or how are y'all approaching that, knowing that exits are desired?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think Dan and I are in this, we're in the same boat. So we don't want to be the laundry guys for the rest of our lives. And so everyone's, in that way is very aligned of, how do we build something big that, that has resale value, and that, certain players would be attracted by, P&G, Electrolux, Henkel, Unilever, et cetera. And so I think our thought is, going back to creating options for yourself, is, really get as big as we can. I mean, I don't mean to sound kind of like vague and flippant, but if we get to 30 major cities with a couple hundred franchise locations, that's a brand now that's attractive to the P&Gs, the Electroluxes of the world. But until then, it's pure execution mode. And that's what we try to keep ourselves and everyone focused on, is exits in the back of our head. There's definitely a path that we're working towards, but the stepping stones between here and there are where the majority of the focus is what does the next stone look like? Is it a round, easy one to step onto, or is it a weird, jagged one that we got to kind of jump on and quickly get off of?
Yeah.
And we're hyper focused on putting one foot in front of the other right now versus trying to jump across the whole river all at once.
Yeah. So two wrap up questions for you as we kind of get close to our time here. Do you ever talk to your original college co-founders about what they're doing? Do they miss out on the opportunity? Or they, what are those conversations like at all, if you continue to have them?
Yeah, no. So we stay very close. They love hearing about it. One of them's actually running marketing at another startup and loves it. So he's getting the same taste again. He did his tour of duty at Pepsi and cut his teeth there, and now is in startup world with some equity and loving more responsibility and loving what he's doing. And the other the other partner is in New York doing banking, and he actually invested in our last round. So he also is doing well for himself and is getting to vicariously live through it. And again, loves what he's doing. Is just ultimately happy for me and what we're doing. And so it's been amazing that we've been able to keep in touch and continue to support each other throughout life.
So you've raised money 3 times. Mom and dad told you not to do it. Did mom and dad ever hop in on the friends and family side of things?
They did and did not. And what I mean by that is they didn't directly participate in rounds. My mom was always kind of bugging my dad. We should have done that. Why didn't we do that? But early on, we did take out a home equity loan, and they were willing to. We put up a condo that I had purchased after selling the first business, as well as their house or a portion of their home equity up as collateral.
Okay.
So in that way, they were willing to. I mean, we were able to take out a $50,000 loan and get us to that first spot of raising an outside round.
Yeah. So, well, you've got to have capital, right? And you hear the constant stories from entrepreneurs about, putting $30,000 on the American Express card or whatever else it was. So, anyways, you did it on a home equity line and on the bank of mom and dad. So it happens. And again, you executed well and you've got it to this point, and gosh knows, it looks and sounds like a great story, and fantastic for y'all and good for Charlotte too. So great job to get to where it is. Way to be self-aware and willing and able to step back and evaluate how to make it succeed going forward. It certainly sounds like you're on the right track for pushing it forward, and I hope you get another 150 franchisee request as a result of this podcast here today. So I mean, it's a nice business model for somebody to be able to step into, right? I don't want to say you perfected it, but you've certainly put a damn good roadmap out there for somebody to come execute on. So good luck.
No, I appreciate that. It's been an exciting journey. It's certainly full of ups and downs, and just appreciative of the people that we've been able to meet along the way. I mean, all the conversations you and I have had at different Charlotte events, and that I think is one of the most exciting and rewarding parts of it, is the people you get to meet and the support you get along the way. Is just, it gives you complete faith in humanity and the ability for all of us to kind of help each other out and try to accomplish goals and build something together.
No, you're exactly right. So, and again, the things that y'all have done, both publicly and non-publicly, for the Charlotte startup community, being present and helping others is fantastic, and it's what's necessary to continue to get this thing off the ground. So, good luck, and thanks for joining us on the podcast today.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me again, and look forward to talking again soon.
Absolutely. Go knock it out of the park.
We'll do it.
Listed as owner of and an investment advisor representative of Portis Wealth Advisors, a registered investment advisor. Registration does not imply a certain level of skill or training. Opinions expressed on this program do not necessarily reflect those of Portis Wealth Advisors. The topics discussed and opinions given are not intended to address the specific needs of any listener. Portis Wealth Advisors does not offer legal or tax advice. Listeners are encouraged to discuss their financial needs with the appropriate professional regarding your individual circumstance. Investments described herein may be speculative and may involve a substantial risk of loss. Interest may be offered only to persons who qualified as accredited investors under applicable state and federal regulation or an eligible employee of the management company. There generally is no public market for the interest. Prospective investors should particularly note that many factors affect performance, including changes in the market conditions and interest rates, and other economic, political, or financial developments. Past performance is not and should not be construed as indicative of future results.